Welcome back to the Eric Krown Crypto channel. Wishing you a happy and healthy start to this nice lazy Saturday morning over here from Helsinki, Finland. Plenty of things to be following up on today from the short-term time frame analysis that we were looking at yesterday as that plays out, and what that sort of means for the weekend, and then also a major signal that will be coming as soon as tomorrow night at 8 p.m. No, not 8 p.m., but 7 p.m. Eastern time. That will have some major implications with price action, amongst other things as well. I'll save a lot of the more heavy-hitting macro stuff for tomorrow's analysis, and for today, I also want to let you know that yes, the trading journal features in the Krown trading application are now live and enhanced, and you can find that for free in the link in the description below. You can now compare different journals amongst each other, so you can see which strategy is working better compared to another strategy, for example, amongst other things here too. And that's going to be having more enhanced functionality coming in the not so distant future. Other than that, I should humbly request that if you do find this content valuable, then the best way to give back would be to simply like the video. You can always dislike the video afterwards, especially if we talk about bearish stuff, because that's where all the dislikes typically start to pile up. But fair enough. We'll talk. I do want to reiterate my stance on the higher term timeframes for Bitcoin specifically, that yes, I am, I generally think that there's a lot more things pointing towards more significant downside in the next month to 2 months to come. But in the short term, there can definitely be some bounces in between. Anyways, we'll start off with perhaps the most important thing to be aware of that is not happening today, but as soon as tomorrow, which is the weekly closure. And that is a silver cross to the downside that we are ever so slightly about to confirm, and that's between the yellow 21 and the green 55 exponential moving averages right here. We can forecast the price needed in order to actually officially cross those to the downside coming into tomorrow's weekly closure, and that would be, credit to caretaker for this one, with any sort of a closure below 35,642. Obviously, any closing anywhere below like $42,000, which is where the 55 is going to make the likelihood of that crossing to the downside next week, if it doesn't happen officially this week, extremely likely. But for right now, heavy potential for that. We can also backtest the few iterations that we do have in Bitcoin's history over here. There's only 3, to be fair, so not that many, but ultimately the 2 of the last 3 have actually denoted some major moves to the downside. Measure them out over here. We can measure this first one, of course, coming in from 2014. I did take this measurement from essentially that last run up to a high into the, obviously the major macro low right here, and that took about 63 days from high to low and did about 63.5% to the downside. This is not to say that, we're always going to be expecting it to be like 63%, for example. In fact, I expect it to be much less than that, if anything. And if we do go over into 2018 over here, same thing. Silver cross happens to the downside. Last high to next major macro low was about 54.5%. We already see, a major reduction in that, and does it over the course of about 56 days. Do keep in mind, just because it does find the lows doesn't mean like it immediately reverses to, moon boy heaven right after that. In this case took, half a year. In this case took about a quarter of a year. And then of course we actually did have another iteration of it over here in the Rona dump. This one was not a good one, so not perfect obviously, but being that this was a bit of a black swan sort of in scenario, we can kind of mark it off as a bit of an outlier perhaps. That would be a good counterpoint to what I'm about to say, but this cross actually happening after the low was in, obviously. Now that move was still very much comparable to the last few, this one being about 51.21% versus 54.5 versus 63.5 essentially. So that is still pretty much on target. But that one officially happening after the cross. Anyways, in this case right here, that would, put some pretty heavy downside pressure on price action. I do want to reiterate my stance that I do not think that it would be as nasty as the prior ones. I think, we'd probably be looking at, at most maybe like a 30 to 40% move, and very likely bounce in between. And there is hopium. There still is hopium. I think still the best sort of, let's actually go over the hopium right now. I think the most reasonable hopium would be Bitcoin gets, another wick somewhere down around here, around the 0.5 Fibonacci retracement. Let me actually just get rid of this for a second so you can see. There we go, the 0.5 fib from the macro high to the macro breakout, and that would be at about $32,000, essentially the weekly range lows on a wick basis, and then probably dribbles on, something like this, and perhaps puts in a higher low, and then perhaps over the next, 3 to 6 months does something like this, and then specifically gets back above not just 382, but specifically about $44,000. If you see something like that, that's going to be extremely macro bullish, and I'd be looking for, moves back up to $60,000 and beyond. That would be the blue hopium, at least in my opinion, or at least the most reasonable route for something like that. Until something like that happens, though, there are several things that do suggest that risk to the downside significantly outweighs risk to the upside on a statistical basis, which we've gone over a million times on this channel. I probably won't do it for the millionth and first time on this particular video, although we might reference a few things. I'll save that for tomorrow. Anyways, this was a chart for the short-term timeframes that we were working off of yesterday. And for the short-term timeframes, we did get that move that we were looking for. Once again, a test into the blue block territory right here. And, do I think that we could put another wick down around there over the weekend? Definitely possible, but ultimately, I'm kind of looking for the same thing as yesterday as well. Likely another bounce and play out a range. In this case, what things are essentially aligning with a bounce off this territory, maybe with one more wick to the downside, kind of similar to this LARP line right here. Well, in this case, we got the blue box, obviously, of peace and prosperity, which has been essentially the last few weekly lows. So I do like that area, especially over a weekend. We also do see extremes, very extremes here on the BBWP volatility indicator for the 4-hour or even all the way up to a 6-hour. Yeah, hitting 100 percentile. And that is consistent amongst all of the timeframes below that, of course. So very likely going to go into a contraction phase after that, or mathematically, it is inevitable to go into a contraction phase after that, which within the context of our current trend likely means a bit of sideways at minimum, and perhaps tries a little bit of upside. On top of that, we do see some divergences forming over here. Not confirmed, obviously, but going to be pretty easy to put in some drives of regular bullish divergence all the way up to, yet again, a time frame as large as a 6-hour, kind of representing the medium term. Does a 12-hour have it as potential? Yeah, it would have it as potential, but what would actually confirm it as a local low? I think the 4 is probably best look right here. What would confirm it as a local low and likely beget a try up somewhere just north of $37,000 would be with a 4-hour closure, specifically above about 36,400 or so. If you get something like that, probably does test back around here. Also on the alignment of a a likely weekend bounce, let's say maybe after one more test a little bit around our current lows, would be the funding rates over here on the daily and the hourly. The daily is showing its first consistent negative rates. They're rather small, but it is there, negative 0.005%. So shorts are paying to hold their positions to longs. And on the hourly, we do see negative 0.004%. And traditionally speaking, just kind of over the weekend, we typically do see a move that's contra to the week's direction, especially off of like a very strong trending week direction, which we, kind of had right there with a more than 10% move to the downside. Anyways, in this case, again, a little bit more on the side of, hey, probably does try a little bit of short-term upside. On top of that, if we go reference stochastic momentum on the short-term timeframes, again, I believe all the way up to a 6-hour, things are pretty, critical right here. And we do see that 6-hour stochastic momentum will actually turn to the upside above 36.3. So that is a nice point to be relevant or aware of. 4-hour will turn up above 35.7. Again, a corrective signal likely incoming. So, I'm not looking for like a reversal based off of this, but probably a little bit of short-term upside. 3-hour is going to be showing what? Is going to be showing 35.5, and hourly is going to be showing probably up as well. Actually down, and we'll turn up above about 36, or, we're very, very close to that area right now. So if Bitcoin does do that, where essentially am I looking towards? Probably somewhere around the 382 to the 0.5, which is about 37 to 37.5. But I remain higher term time frame majorly bearish below 37.5 especially. So as long as Bitcoin's closing dailies below 37.5, that's 37,500. Risk remains heavily to the downside over the next couple months, not like today or tomorrow. Again, I want to just reiterate that. Anyways, other than that, what else do we need to get into? I didn't actually check out the 12-hour and the daily. Yeah, 12-hour is still nosediving below 38.5, and daily is also going to be down below about 36,350. So, the daily is pretty critical here. So again, if Bitcoin wants to play a bit of a bounce, that's completely fine. But ultimately, again, I want to reiterate my stance. As long as Bitcoin's below 37.5, I'm looking at this as a strong trending move, which likely reaches lower in the coming month or two, somewhere down around about 32 to 33,000-ish bucks. Anyways, what else do I want to get into over here? Yes. Okay. So we spoke about the hopium. We spoke about that. Cool. I think we'll get into the last point as well. Because I think this is just, this is always relevant. We've been coming back to this chart for almost 3 months now. It's the 5-day volatility versus momentum chart. Anytime that we've seen 5-day BBWP measuring volatility in the teen-digit percentiles, or especially lower than that, the expansion phase from it in the past couple of years, or a little bit, or I guess, yeah, a little bit more than 2 years now, has led to an average move of about 45% to the upside or the downside. over the course of the next a little bit over 40 days. So that's kind of where I'm getting that next, month to 2 month time frame from. We've back tested it over here several times, as you are probably aware. And what we can use to get a bias on direction from this is, of course, the 5-day stochastic momentum oscillator, of which anytime that we have seen a direction on that plus volatility expansion, which, by the way, the key ingredient of this past week, like the most important thing that happened this past week, was that 5-day BBWP is very obviously starting to expand off of its lows, which I think that this is quite literally the move, assuming that we stay above about 15 percentile or so. Well, the 5-day stochastic momentum oscillator has gotten the direction perfectly on this for the last, 6 iterations. And we can go back further than that, but this is just all in the same pane. So it's nice and visually pleasing. Anyways, this will remain with downside momentum and also getting within the bearish control zone for the first time freshly since December on that last major massive dump-ola party, as long as Bitcoin is below 41,550. So that's kind of a major pain point for the long term here. As long as Bitcoin's below there, I do look at it. I do look at it as long-term risk to the downside. And obviously, if we were to kind of shave off about the average of that, which is about 45%, that puts Bitcoin somewhere down around about $25,000. Again, I think that a lot of things would have to happen before that becomes relevant, and I do think that there is still a hopium-ish case here. It's just as long as Bitcoin is playing out this sort of move underneath this sort of a major area, I do look at that as more relevant, among other things, which we're going to go into a full-on deep dive tomorrow. Other than that, I'll just remind you the old Bybit show, as I am obligated to do so. Of course, whenever it comes to leverage exchanges, they are typically offering you some sort of a, like a little carrot on a stick in order to get you in. And unless you already have some sort of a some sort of a winning strategy, winning formula, which, by the way, you can backtest on the Krown trading application for free, or on Excel as well if you desire, then it's probably not going to end too well for you. In fact, in my experience, it only ends in tears. So I'll just leave that right there. I think they have a deposit bonus of $3,000, $4,000. It's in the link in the description below if you happen to give a fuck. And I'll be signing off on that note. Take care, be safe, and see you hopefully soon.